In this video, we are going to make some basic post requests. We're also going to use Fiddler to make these post requests. Post request is usually used to create some things. While GET request is designed to retrieve information from the server, post request is designed to request that a web server accepts the data that we sent in the request message body and store it on the server. The main difference between post and GET is the payload, and you need to send a request body with a post request. PyWeb API accepts JSON payload. So let's take a look at how to make a post request. If we open Fiddler, we can select the post verb here. And as you can see, now we can specify a request body at the bottom. So what do we want to post? Let's say we would like to create a new Py tag. Again, let's take a look at the help file to find out the appropriate endpoint. If we look at the point controllers, we do not see an item to create a Py point. And if we think about the Py data archive structure, a point belongs to the data archive. So let's take a look at another controller, which is the data server. Now we see an action for create point. Great. Let's take a look at this action. So we can see that this endpoint accepts a post request with the endpoint data server's web ID points. And the web ID is the ID of the data archive. So to use this endpoint, let's first find out the web ID for the data archive. If we go to the main PyWeb API page and go to data servers, we can see that the name of the data archive is dnglemon.af, and then we have the web ID here. So let's just copy this web ID. We'll copy the format of the URL and use it in Fiddler. And we will replace web ID with the web ID for our data archive. Okay, so we have our endpoint here. Since we're using basic authentication, we have to specify the authorization header. So let's again get the base64 encode string. And this time, since I'm creating a Py tag, we need a more privileged account. So the account name is admin and the password is password. So we'll copy the encoded string here. And for the request body, let's take a look at the help file again. So we can see that we need to specify the name for the tag and probably the point class and point type. The web ID is very likely to be automatically created as well as the ID. So let's we can copy the sample request so we don't have to type it out and paste it here. So let's remove the web ID and ID section. And we will change the name for the tag that we want to create. We can keep a point class classic. Let's say I wanted to create an int32 tag and specify the future as false. So let's submit a post request. Let's take a look here. We're getting a 415 response. what that means is unsupported media type. But this is because we haven't specified what format that our request body is at. So we need to add an additional request header, which is a content type, and that we're using a JSON request body. So let's hit execute again. Okay. This time, we can see that the response is 201 created here. Great. If we go back to the help file, this status code indicates that the point is created. So this is great. To verify that, we can take a look at the list of points on the server. And if I find my tag on the page, we have seen that we have created my tag on the data archive with point class classic, which we specify, as well as the point type, which is int32. Great, we have created our PyPoint. The next thing we'd like to do is to write a value to this tag. Again, we can take a look at what available action we can do. Under the point controller, there is an update action, but this is to update a point. If we recall, we did get the value at the stream controller. So let's take a look at the stream controller here. Apart from get value, there's also update value. And it updates a value for a specified stream. And this looks like this is what we would like to do with the PyPoint. Again, let's copy the URL format and post it in Fiddler. We'll post to stream's web ID value. Go back to the composer. And we also need the web ID for the stream. And in this case, it is our Py tag. So we'll copy the web ID from here. In fact, I'm going to copy it for later use. Okay, now let's keep the request headers. We need to figure out our response request body. So if we take a look at the help file, we can take a look at the sample request here. Let's copy and paste here. We can see that the timestamp is specified, as well as the value, units, abbreviation, good and questionable. The most important part is the timestamp and value. So let's remove these information. So for timestamp, remember it is in UTC time. So we can specify a timestamp for today at midnight UTC. Since it's an integer tag, we like to specify an integer value. We can submit the request. If we take a look at the response, it says 202 accepted. Again, looking at the status code in the help file, it means that the value is accepted for potential buffered update. To verify that the value has successfully been written, we can use PyWeb API to navigate to the point again. So we can get the value here. And after it finished loading, we can see the value that we've just written. The timestamp is today midnight UTC and the value of 10. So this shows that the value has successfully been written to the PyData archive. Next, we can take a look at how to write multiple values to the PyPoint. If we recall, we got multiple values from the StreamStat controller. If we recall, we got multiple values from the stream controller getRecorded. So we can use an update values to write multiple values. The URL string is streams web ID recorded, and the URL parameter includes the web ID of the stream, update option, and buffer option. In the simplest case, we could use the same URL and change the endpoint to record it. If we take a look at the sample request, we can see that this JSON object, it's an array enclosed by square bracket and a comma between each timestamp value pair. So we could do the same in our request body. Let's change the timestamp to 1 second and 2 seconds after midnight UTC, and we'll write different values, 15 and 20. And then we can submit the request. As you can see, we also get a tool to accept the response. So let's take a look and make sure that our value is written. We can go back to the information about the tag and get recorded data. In this case, we can see that only one value is written, probably because the intermediate value has been compressed out. To convince myself this is the case, let me write 2 more values. One at 3 seconds for 22, and have 5 seconds at 10. Maybe add another value here. 10 seconds at 12. Submitting the request gives us another tool to accept it, and we can refresh this page. Okay, now we see that all 3 values are written, 22, 10, and 12. This indicates that we could write multiple values to the same PyPoint. And finally, similar to we could get multiple values from multiple resources, we can also write multiple values for multiple resources. So to do that, we're again going to use the ad hoc action. If we take a look at StreamStat, you can see that we could update values ad hoc action available. And the sample request is a JSON array. Within each array object, you specify a web ID for the endpoint, as well as the items, so that the items consist of another array that contains the timestamp value pair. So to demonstrate that, we could write a value to our newly created tag, as well as the NAF attribute, which we have gotten the web ID in a previous video. And that's the attribute for New York temperature. So let's compose this post request. This time we need to specify the web IDs and items. So for simplicity's sake, I am going to copy this. Okay, and I need to replace the web ID. So first of all, need to replace the web ID for the pi tag. We can write timestamps. And we could simply write one value for now. Okay, and then we need to replace the web ID for the second item. And we can write here in 2 values for that. So we can change it to and we can change this as well. When you hit execute, we can see that we got an endpoint not found. So let's take a look and see what that means. Okay. So we're missing our endpoint is incorrect. So we're missing PyWeb API here. So if we execute again, this time we got a 202 accepted response. So if we refresh this page, we should see our new value getting written. Okay, so this is the new value that we just written to this pi tag, and we could also verify that the AF attribute got is new value. Since we wrote historical value, we can take a look at this pi tag, New York temperature. If we go back to the list of PyPoint, we can take a look at New York temperature, and we could get the recorded data. So if you recall, we wrote the time at midnight. Okay, and we wrote a value of 1.1, which is here, and the second, let's take a look at our second timestamp, is it's 1 minute past midnight. So here, 1 minute past midnight, and the value is 2.2, which is the value that we've written. So as you can see that you could use stream sets ad hoc action to write values, in fact write multiple values to multiple resources. To recap, we have demonstrated how to do simple post requests. You can use post requests to create elements, attributes, PyPoints. You could and we have demonstrated how to create a pi tag, write to the pi tag, write multiple values as well as write values in bulk.